When you lose God, you lose yourself. This is the thing that like people don't really understand, that you lose the reality of your experience. And the book ends, and I will give this away because it's not a mystery story, but the book ends as he gets to the end of this museum with the Pietà. So he comes back to Mary and the mother. And my point about the Pietà, which is kind of the inspiration for the book, is I think it's the most beautiful thing a human being has ever made.
I think I agree, and I know there are many people who will be unfamiliar with it. Young people,
yes,
ignorant people, who will know. And no, it's so wonderful. If you don't mind, explain what is the Pietà.
Well, Michelangelo got a contract to Pietà. Is the pity of the compassion of Mary holding her dead son after the crucifixion. So it's a mother holding her dead son, and
he was 23.
Yes.
See, that's
in the contract. You'll love this though. In the contract, it said it has to be the most beautiful work in marble anyone has ever made. That was his contract. I complained when you want it by January.
No money. Has to be those or no money.
But it literally is.
But he was 20. This to me is just not comprehensible.
I know, it's unbelievable.
I mean, I think you kind of work up to something like that.
Yeah.
That's your final work.
Yeah.
I honestly, I did not know until I read your book that it's something that he pulled off.
It's remarkable.
And
so my point about this, and it's my point about the arts in general, is when you're staring at this thing and thinking how beautiful it is, you forget that it is a picture of the worst thing that can happen to anyone, which is the loss of a child. It is the worst thing that can happen to everyone, which is the loss of God. And it is this moment of the darkest despair in human history because it comes before the resurrection. It's the time that we're coming into now of Holy Week. And yet, a mortal man, as you say, in his 20s, fashioned out of that grief and pain and evil something so beautiful, you can hardly believe it. And the question that the book ends with is, if a mortal man can do that, what can God make of the beauty of the evil and sorrow and suffering of the world? And that is the answer, as far as I'm concerned, to the question of evil, as they say. How can there be an all-knowing, all-good God who allows evil? And a lot of times people philosophize about it and they say, well, so because people have to be free and all that stuff. And I don't feel that reaches you in the moment of suffering, when the suffering is so real and philosophy is so cold. But this beauty does reach you in that moment, and it speaks to you of something beyond your ability to conceive that we somehow do know is there through our faith.
I mean, it's interesting to me, just as the figure in rope sees the dead body and instantly knows something. What is it about us, human beings, that we see the image of a mother holding the body of her dead, beautiful son that can change us? Because it doesn't make...
Well, because we're not just bodies, are we, right? Everything we do has meaning, and that connects us to something higher than ourselves. And, people have been taught to live without that meaning. So, people have stopped having babies, and why would you have a baby? They cry, they scream, they crap all over you, they're total pains in the neck. And mothers are relegated to doing these things that if you look at them without meaning, they're nothing, making dinner, changing diapers, doing these things. And yet, each one of us actually knows that those things had tremendous meaning, that when a mother puts a meal on the table, she's actually giving you love when she feeds you, when she takes care of you. I mean, you only have to insult someone's mother to find out how much that person means, And we have these ridiculous conversations, like people will say, well, if you had to pay a woman to be a wife and mother, she'd be in the six figures. The six figures, I couldn't. I'd give my wife six figures. I'd be, it'd be nothing, because it's to ask how much that's worth is like asking the color of 5. It's just meaningless. It's a meaningless thing because she is living in the meaning of what she's doing. A loving mother is living in the meaning of what she's doing, and and I think that when you lose that, when you are cut off from that, then, and when you see a dead body, you see something that seems to be cut off from that. I mean, I know people who have watched people die, and they've died in their arms, and they see something go. They see something leave. And so confronting murder is confronting evil because it's confronting the meaning that was in that body when it was alive. And it's confronting the fact that that meaning is gone. And so it really does double back into, from that evil, you kind of are blown back into faith. And that's why that moment in Rope is so incredibly powerful. It doesn't actually exist in the movie, but it's in the play. And it's such a wonderful moment.
Well, I still, when I think of the Pietà, it seems to me that one potential reaction to seeing the nightmare horror of a mother holding the body of her beautiful son who's been murdered could lead some people to nihilism, could lead some people to despair. Can we guess why it doesn't, or can we speculate? Because it's interesting. Maybe it does, some, I don't know.
It's fun. I think we have been taught to think now. And, I made this, just before I came in, somebody had read this little piece that I wrote about an experiment they did where they ask you to look at a basketball game and how many times somebody in a certain shirt is passing the basketball around. And while this is going on, a guy in a gorilla suit walks by in the background, and nobody sees him because they're not paying attention to that. And I think that's what we've been taught. And the end of this article was the guy in the gorilla suit is God. We've been taught not to look at him, And I think that this is part of the bad side of science. Science is a beautiful thing. So many wonderful things come out of it. But it has also taught us to look at the world in pieces. And the world actually doesn't exist in pieces, and we don't exist in pieces. We are organic wholes. And I think that if you can look at the Pietà and see nothing but marble or death, I think that it's partly training. I sometimes think we hear a lot about autism and how much autism there is in the world, and maybe we're eating something or breathing something as pollutants. But I wonder sometimes if maybe it's taught. Maybe we're taught and it shapes our brain, and then we pass the shape of that brain onto other people, because it seems to me a lot of us, when you commit abortion, you're thinking like that. You're thinking in an autistic way. When you renounce motherhood in order to get some job that has no meaning at all, I think that we have been taught to do that.
The denunciation, or it seems that our society, we've come to a place, and I mean, you could argue it starts in some ways with the pill in 1961, but the denigration of motherhood. There was, I think, in most cultures, nothing more sacred and glorious than the idea of a mother and child. And when you think of, I think it was Jordan Peterson that kind of tipped me off to this recently. He was talking about, the image of Christ, as the ultimate man, and the image of Mary. And Mary is always with child, with child, with child. It's the mother and child, mother and child, mother and child. And we have lost that. Of course, that's the image of the Pietà. But there is something sacred, numinous, transcendent about the picture of a mother and child, about the image of a mother and child. And to the extent that we have said, no, be a career woman, you can do that, but don't focus on that. That's really nothing.
You're just a mom. You're just a mom.
It's bizarre and ultimately grandly destructive in every direction.
And it is, the socialists realized right away that Karl Marx and Engels realized right away we have to get mothers out of the home because they are a bulwark against materialism. And the capitalists ultimately caught on to that as well, because they think, well, this takes you out of the workforce, and if you're in the workforce, then there's twice as many workers, and wages can stagnate, and nobody will care because they'll have two working parents. But in fact, no worldly system wants mothers in it, because mothers are actually doing something that connects them to an other world. And I think that they were sacred. They were sacred for the simple reason that they're sacred. you know, and they actually remind us of the sacred, and they tie men to the sacred, and they make men obligated to the sacred. And I think that that's why we try to get rid of them.
And I think it's kind of like looking at the corpse as you describe it, looking at the Pietà or looking at the image of a mother and child. You don't need to know consciously why it affects you.
Right.
In other words, you don't need to put two and two together. You just need to look at it, but because you are who you are, a human being, it viscerally and unavoidably affects you.
Right, and this is the other thing we're taught. We're taught to think that these are illusions, these feelings that we have, they're mere feelings. But in fact, we are machines meant to ingest reality. I don't want to call us machines, we are organisms meant to understand reality. And yeah, can we get things wrong? Of course we can, but the very fact that we can get things wrong tells you that we can get things right. And when you look at a mother and you're moved and you understand you're seeing something, you know, and you always do, you know, whenever you see a woman with a child, you always realize you're seeing something somehow better than the workaday world. I think we're just seeing reality.
If you think these conversations are valuable, would you do us a favor and please like this video and subscribe to this channel? When you do that, you help us get these conversations out to a wider audience by telling YouTube that people are interested in this. Also, you can go to SocratesInTheCity.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you can check back every week. There's new stuff here every week. Thank you for tuning in.